Welcome to the channel, guys. Today we're going to be making chicken and broccoli Alfredo. We've got all the ingredients that we need, right? So we've got chicken, milk, broccoli, Parmesan cheese, flour, butter, garlic, fettuccine pasta, and then we're also going to be making garlic bread. So we have some extra garlic for that and some extra butter for that. And the cool thing about the butter that we're going to make for the garlic bread, we're going to be able to use it again. So you don't have to use it up right now. You can put the rest in a little container, and next time you feel like having garlic bread, it's ready in like 2 minutes. Alright, so let's get started. First thing we've got to do, we've got to get a pot, we've got to boil some water. Alright, the next thing we're going to need is a saute pan for the chicken breast to make the Alfredo sauce and sear the chicken. And we're going to need a small sauce pot to heat up the butter and melt the garlic into there. So let's do that as well. Okay, so now we've got our water. We're going to turn that on. This is one of the longest parts of this meal, is going to be just heating the water up to boil the pasta. The rest of it we're going to be able to do pretty quickly. So while the pasta is, or the water is heating up, we're going to go over a couple of things in terms of our recipe that we're using, where you can find the recipe, and what's a decent portion size. So the link for this recipe is going to be in the description just below the video, so if you just look down right there, you should get the whole recipe. This is based on just a single serving for one person. Cool way to do this with pasta is to make a little ball kind of like this. You want it to be about the size of a quarter when you hold the pasta tightly together. That's going to give you a pretty decent portion size. So we'll put the pasta aside for. So the first thing we're actually going to do is focus on the garlic butter. We're going to use 1/4 pound of butter. Obviously that's way more than you need to make garlic bread for one meal. But you can make garlic bread anytime, or you can use garlic butter for whatever you might need to use, just adding flavor to something down the road. So let's start making that. It is super simple. We're going to take our small pot. Let's put that right here. And we're going to take the entire stick of butter and just drop it right in. Okay, now let's clear off our cutting board a little bit. Now that you've seen all our ingredients, let's get them out of the way so that we can do some cooking. Okay, now we're going to take 3 cloves of garlic. Okay, 1, 2, 3. All we're going to do is kind of mash them up or mince them, add them right into that pot with a bit of salt, and just let it go on really low heat while we finish everything else off. Okay? So, best way to do this is to take your knife and be very careful not to cut yourself on the blade, but you're just going to press down and smush it. So we got our garlic smushed once. It's not really chopped up yet. That part you're going to do just like this. You're going to put your fingers on the top of the blade, and you're just going to rock it back and forth. Now, one thing to mention here is you do want to use fresh garlic. You don't want to use garlic powder. You don't want to buy the garlic from the store that has already been pre-minced for you. There's preservatives and that kind of stuff that you buy. You probably don't need that much garlic at once. And if you use something like garlic powder, it's not going to have the same flavor as fresh garlic. So, now that we've got that, you can see it in there, it's just garlic and butter. We're going to add a pinch of salt. So here's my salt. By a pinch, it's pretty healthy. This is unsalted butter that I buy. That way, when you do want something that's not salty, you don't have any salt in your butter, and all you have to do is add a little bit if you want it. Okay, so let's get that on. And we're going to put that on the lowest setting. So really, what we're trying to do there is let that butter melt and absorb the flavor of the garlic. All we're looking to do, we're not looking to get any color on the garlic or anything like that. We just want a little bit of softening to occur so that the garlic flavor gets into the butter and we can use it later. We're going to get our saute pan ready for our chicken breast, because we are going to saute our chicken breast and then we are going to take it back off. Alright, so let's turn our pan on. This is something like a medium-low heat, not a super lot of heat. And we're just going to grab a little bit of oil. So this is what the store had because this is coronavirus season and apparently nobody has oil. So this is extra light olive oil. You don't need to use this. You can use literally whatever kind of oil you like. This is just what they had at the store when I went. So we're going to put in just like a teaspoon or so, not a lot, enough so that you can move it around on the bottom of the pan and cover the bottom of the pan. And then we're just going to set aside for a moment. Now let's turn our attention to the chicken. So this is raw chicken. Raw chicken has stuff in it. So you do need to be careful when you're dealing with chicken. You don't want to put this directly on your cutting board. If you do, you're going to need to wash your cutting board with soap and water immediately afterwards. So preferably what you're going to want to do is season this on a plate or even on the tray that it comes with. Now, when we're talking about making a meal for just one person, this is one chicken thigh. It's boneless, skinless. This is how I bought it. It's probably about 4 to 6 ounces. This should be plenty of chicken when you combine it with a bunch of cooked pasta and the sauce and the broccoli, especially considering we're going to have the garlic bread as well. So we're just going to put some salt on here. If this looks like a lot of salt to you, you can use less. But the reason why restaurant food is always so tasty is because they know how to season their food. And putting on the seasonings is important. Now, we could go nuts here and add like garlic powder or raw garlic or a bunch of other ingredients. We don't really need to. All we're trying to do is seal in some of the juices from this chicken. So we're not even going to cook it all the way right now. We're just going to start searing it in the pan, and we're going to take it back off and put it on this same plate because we are going to cook it again. But once you're ready to eat it, you want to make sure that your chicken has been fully cooked and it's not touching anything that once had raw chicken on it. So after we sear this and take it off, we're going to cut it up and put it back into the sauce to finish it cooking. At that point, we need to get rid of this plate. So right now, let's get it started. Here we come over here. Can you hear that sizzle? That's the sound you want to hear. All right. Very important now that you wash your hands. I've got raw chicken on them. That's not good. So aside from them being salty, I've got to get the raw chicken off. Okay. Okay, fantastic. So we've got our chicken working. While our chicken is working, our butter is working, and our pasta water is getting hot. So the next thing we're going to do is talk about what an alternative to this might be. So what would an alternative to this be? Unfortunately, it might be something like this that you buy from the grocery store and just stick in the microwave. Well, what's wrong with that, you ask? Well, a couple things. One, this costs like $6. So it's not really inexpensive. It's not going to cook that much faster than what we're doing. And then this is the biggest thing, is if you look at the ingredients list, let's see what we've got in here. We've got modified cornstarch, cultured milk enzymes, datum, xanthan gum, lactic acid, calcium lactate, seasoning. It doesn't even say what that is, just straight up says seasoning. Wheat starch, extracts of turmeric in annatto color, natural flavor. So I think you're kind of starting to get the point that what's in here is not going to be as good for us as what we're making. Because what we're making is just these ingredients right here. Flour, milk, cheese, butter, salt, broccoli, and chicken. Okay, so in the meantime, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this in the microwave. And when it's done, I'm going to show you what it looks like, what the portion size of it is. And I want you to keep in mind that it's got 70% of your saturated fat for the day, 50% of your total fat for the day, 42% of your sodium for the day. So this is like half of what you're supposed to eat in an entire day. And when we open it up and look at it, it's really not that big. This is not even like a full bowl of pasta. Alright, let's cook it. Let's see what it looks like when it's done. Okay, our chicken has been going for just a couple minutes here. But honestly, that's all we really need to do. Let's give it a look. Okay, we're going to flip it over. And let me bring this a little bit closer to the camera. As you can see, still sizzling, got a little bit of a golden brown color. That's exactly what we want. And if we look at our pasta water, which I'm not sure you can see, let me pull the camera over here so you can see that a little better. Our pasta water is now starting to boil. Okay, now one thing that is important to do with pasta water is to add just a little bit of salt. Just like we season the chicken so it'll have some flavor, we're going to need to season the pasta for when that goes in there, so it has some flavor too. Let's take a look at our butter back here. Like I said, we're just melting the butter and getting the garlic soft. Obviously, smell-o-vision hasn't been invented yet, but if you can smell that, it smells like garlic bread. It's delicious. Okay, now we're just going to take 1 clove of this garlic, and we are going to do the same thing we did for the garlic butter. We're going to smush it down. We're going to chop it up. And this is going to be for our Alfredo sauce, which in just a moment we are going to start making. Okay, now let's pull that chicken off. Let's put it back on this plate. We'll hold on to it for a second. All right, so there's our chicken. It looks delicious. It's raw though, so don't eat it now. Okay. Now we're going to take our butter. This is about 1 ounce of butter. I'm going to put it directly into that pan that I just had the chicken cooking in, and I'm going to let it start to melt. This one, unlike the other butter, is going to melt much faster because our pan is already much hotter. So you do want to move it around. You don't want it to brown up too much. And let's turn the heat down to fairly low. Now we're going to take our flour and we're going to add an ounce of flour in. This is what is going to thicken our milk and give us that delicious, creamy Alfredo that we love and know. Okay, so what we have to do is we have to mix the flour into the butter. And what we want it to look like is just slightly brown, but we kind of want it to look like sand, just a little bit. So this is the wet sand look that we're looking for. If I bring it up closer to the camera, you can see that it's got that look like mud or sand or something like that. The smell you're getting right now, if you were here, is super delicious. It smells like toasted peanuts or something like that. Now, before we add our milk, we're going to add one more thing in. We're going to add our garlic in. And we're just going to let the garlic cook for a couple seconds because honestly, it's going to continue to cook with all the other things that we still need to add into here and make it delicious. Alright, let's also add a pinch of salt because, like everything, we need to season everything. And we're going to add our milk. This is about 1.5 cups of milk. And once you put this milk in and you start mixing it around with the flour and the butter and the garlic that's already in there, what you'll see is it comes up to boiling is the milk start to thicken. And this is one thing you don't really want to stop mixing it right now, because if you do, you're going to have a real clumpy sauce, and that won't be tasty. It'll taste like flour paste or something instead of Alfredo sauce. So, this process here, we're going to dice up our chicken. Now after this, we're going to need to watch the knife, and if we cut it directly on the cutting board, you're going to need to clean the cutting board as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my tongs to hold it, and I'm going to use my knife to cut it, and I'm going to cut it right on this plate. So just kind of push into it with your tongs or fork or anything else, and we're just looking to cut this into basically bite-sized pieces so that when we add it back into the sauce and it finishes cooking, we're going to have nice bite-sized chunks of chicken when we're eating our pasta. Now just turn the plate and go right back across the other way. Now if it doesn't look super pretty, that's fine. The point of this is not to make it look pretty, it's to make it the right size for when we're eating. And this is going to go back into our buttery pasty thing over here. Alright, let's get rid of the plate, let's get rid of the tongs, let's get rid of all that stuff. And now I'm looking at my water over here and it's boiling. So, at the moment, what you've got is this kind of pasty looking thing. All we want to do is keep this on like really low heat and just keep it moving occasionally. Oh, if I can get it to light, there we go. Alright, we're lit. Now, what we're doing right here is making sure that the chicken cooks. Okay? Let's take a check on our butter as well. Okay. So our butter for our garlic bread looks like it's basically done. The garlic just smells really fragrant. You'll see that the butter is just a little bit foamy. And that's all we really want. We're going to take this and we're just going to put it into a little container. So we're going to use the same container that we had butter in earlier. We've got garlic butter for our garlic bread. And we can just set this off to the side and and let it cool down. Okay, at this point, we want to get our pasta. And we want to put it in the water. When you put the pasta in the water, make sure you spread it out some. You just kind of drop it in, and if your water is not really hot and ready to boil, or already at a rolling boil when you put it in, you're going to have a problem. And that problem is going to be your pasta is all going to stick together as it starts to cook. And we are going to push all the pasta down and keep it moving so that it doesn't stick together. Now, some people, when they cook pasta, they like to add a little bit of oil to the pasta water. You can do that. It's not going to keep it from sticking or anything like that. That's kind of an old wives' tale. But the thing that it will do is if your water is very close to the top and it starts boiling really hard with all that pasta starch in there, it'll keep it from boiling over. In my case, I have a really big pot. I don't need to worry about that. I'll be fine. And what we're going to do is we're going to take actually just a little bit of this pasta water and thin out our sauce so that we have the right consistency. Just make it the thickness that you like. Now I'm just going to use this cup and pull a little bit of the water out and put it right on in over here. And again, we're just keeping this on low because all we really want to do is make sure that the chicken cooks through and make sure that our sauce stays hot. Now, let's go back to the pasta for a second. Give it a little stir, a little move around. And I should mention this. If you look on the box of pasta when you buy it, it's going to tell you the cooking time. So I believe for Fettuccine Alfredo, let's see, let's take a look at my box. It says on the box, cook for 12 minutes to get it al dente. Al dente means to the tooth. That means it's going to be a little bit chewy. It's not going to fall apart like a ramen noodle or something like that. It's going to have some bite to it. So what you want to do is cook it maybe even just a minute less than that. That way you still have time to add it to your sauce and adjust it a little bit. That way you won't possibly overcook it and ruin it. You can always cook something a little more. It's really hard to uncook something, like impossible. Alright, now let's turn our attention to our other little side project out of the microwave here. Okay, this is what we got. It doesn't look terrible. If I was hungry, I would eat it. But it doesn't really look good either. So, let's do this. Let's put this in a bowl. And we'll set it aside and we can compare it at the end. So I'm just going to continue to stir this sauce. We don't want little clumps to form, and I can see right now I've got a few little clumps. So the more you kind of mix it around, the more you get those little clumps out of there. Now, another thing that is very important while you are cooking is to taste as you go. If you wait until you're done and then you taste it and it tastes bad, well, there's nothing you can do about that. If you're tasting things as you're going and you realize, ooh, this doesn't taste like much, well, then you can add something back to it. Easiest way to taste something, use whatever you're using to mix it up and just run your finger through it. It needs a little bit of salt. If I were to go sticking my finger directly in there and then I lick it, next time I go to do it, I'm getting all my germs in there. Don't be that guy. Use a spoon or use whatever it is and drip a little bit onto your finger like this. Now, I am a chef, so I can handle it. But a lot of people try doing something like that, they're going to get burned. So just be careful. Alright, at this point, our sauce is tasting good. It's looking good. It's the right consistency. We're mainly waiting for our pasta to finish. We can go ahead and add our broccoli right here. So this is like 5 to 8 florets of broccoli. Floret, fancy little word there. But basically all I've done is take broccoli and put it into roughly a bite-sized piece. So we're going to add that in. Now, the reason we didn't add this earlier is because broccoli is going to cook much faster than the chicken. We need the chicken to be all the way cooked. And once it is all the way cooked, it will have the right consistency and texture in our food. If we put the broccoli in at the same time as we did the chicken, we would have like super mushy broccoli. It might even just fall apart and kind of turn our sauce into something that looks, I don't even know what it would look like. It would probably look like it had little bits of broccoli or something in there, and it wouldn't be very appealing. Now let's feel our butter over here. Okay, back to the butter. So one thing that I always like to do for my garlic bread is I like to add some parsley. Now this is dried parsley. I happen to have a bunch. This is about a tablespoon. I'm just going to add it right on in. And then I'm going to grab a spoon and I'm just going to stir it around. So by adding all that parsley, we're adding in some flavor, but we're also making it look a little bit nicer. It's going to look like your professional garlic butter that you would get from a restaurant. This way. And you can use fresh or dried. I happen to have dried already. No sense in buying things when you don't need to. Save a buck where you can. And then the final ingredient for our garlic butter is just a tiny bit of Parmesan cheese. Not much. The rest of it we're going to use for our sauce. Now one thing that should be said about Parmesan cheese is it's got a pretty potent flavor. Meaning strong. So it's not like American cheese. You can't just put a ton on and have it be creamy and it'll be fine. If you put too much Parmesan cheese, it's going to taste like someone is kicking you in the mouth with that Parmesan cheese flavor. So if you don't like strong cheeses or you don't like that kind of funky foot cheese smell, add bit by bit. One of the ways you can tell when the pasta is just about ready is it starts to get a little more limp. So this stuff is now totally folding over. Remember when we first started, it was hard as a rock, sticking straight up. And what you want to do is actually just bite it. So break a little piece off. If it's getting stuck in your teeth, it's not quite ready. I'm not sure this will show up on camera, but if you look really closely right in the middle of that pasta, you'll see what looks like a lighter color. That's actually just like if you cooked a steak and you cut it open, it was red in the middle. That means it's not quite done. But it's probably about a minute away. So I'm going to get everything ready to drain the pasta. Now in order to drain the pasta, we need a colander. We're going to just put the colander right in the sink. We're going to take our pasta, turn it off, and just dump it right on in. This is a little bit hot. Just be careful. Make sure you're using towels. If you don't have an affinity for getting burned. You don't want to get burned by hot pasta water. It is not pleasant. Super hot. Just be careful. Now, as you can see, a tiny bit of the water stuck to the pasta. And we have a little bit more sauce now. So if you were thinking earlier that your sauce looked too tight, it didn't look right, it looked clumpy or something like that, not a problem. Just add a little bit of pasta water to it. Now, this is also the time where we're going to add our cheese. So we're just going to kind of get everything mixed up and looking creamy here. Because remember, that's what we're making. We're basically making a creamy, cheesy pasta. That is what the Alfredo is. Okay? And we're going to put our cheese on. Now if you notice, the stove is actually off right now. And that is for a reason. If you put something like cheese in a pan, and you have the heat on, it's not going to just melt. It's going to burn to the bottom. And it's not going to be fun to clean up. So, my recommendation is once you add the cheese, make sure your fire is turned off. Burner anymore. All right, let's get another bowl because we're just about done. But we do have to do one more thing. We got to make our garlic bread. So, how are we going to do that? Well, there's not really much to do. And again, this is all during the coronavirus and stores don't have a lot of stuff. I had a really hard time finding the type of bread that I would normally like to use, which is a nice long roll. So instead, I'm going to use what I could find. It's just a hamburger bun. It's not really that exciting. And we're going to take our spoon, and all we have to do is give it a little mix. And we're just going to spoon a little bit over it. Now you do want to try to mix it up some so that you get a little bit of the garlic and you get a little bit of the cheese and such in there. Because that's what makes garlic bread delicious. If it wasn't, it would just be toast. I'm going to stick it in my toaster for just a minute here. Okay. And at this point, our pasta is pretty much done. We're just going to mix the cheese in. It's had a little time to get melty. Now we're just going to get it everywhere. Now there is one more ingredient that you could add to this if you so choose. But I happen to be making this for my 7-year-old son today who does not like pepper. So I haven't added any. If you do like pepper, by all means put it in. I think it tastes delicious. It also adds another little fleck of color. However you would like to do it. Now, let's take our bowl and get us some pasta. Okay. Maybe I should do this so you guys can see too, huh? So as you can see, it didn't seem like we had that much in terms of ingredients on our cutting board. But now that we've cooked everything, cut everything, and are putting it on the plate, it's really filling the plate up quite a lot. And I wanted to make sure I used a similar size plate, or bowl in this case, as I did for the TV dinner. Because I want you to be able to see the difference. Now, I have what we cooked. And if you want to get fancy and add a little something on top of it to make it look even prettier, by all means. But let's just get a close-up on this and see if we can spot any differences. Okay. So here we've got what we made. It's got broccoli, it's got chicken, it's got pasta. We tasted it, we know it tastes good, and we're about to tear it up. And here's TV dinner. Sure, it has been sitting for a couple minutes now, but I don't know, it just doesn't look that good. It's about half as much, and let's be honest here. This cost like $6. This whole thing probably cost about $2.50 to make. And let's put that on the plate too. There we go. All right, so what we've accomplished today in just about 40 minutes is an entire meal. You've got some leftovers here. And if you wanted to make this for more than one person, you certainly could. All you would have to do is add more ingredients. One other thing. We've actually got some sauce left over. So if you were looking at this and thinking needs more sauce, well, we have that too. Alright guys, it's been awesome cooking with you. Keep doing it. And remember, make it yourself. Don't eat this. Eat this. I'll see you next time.
That's why I go on my